I will just give a brief introduction of our presenters tonight, starting with Duane Wise of Wholegrain Digital Systems. I've seen Duane presenting at AES conventions for many years, so I asked him to present something tonight. He has developed software for scientific and signal processing applications for over 40 years. Got his BA from the University of Colorado and his MS at Johns Hopkins. And he currently is researching algorithms for digital audio signal processing and developing digital audio systems and educational materials. He's the founder and president of Wholegrain Digital Systems and a member of the AES, the Cinema Audio Society, NARIS, that's the Grammy people, and Phi Beta Kappa. Anthony Rodriguez of Walk Sound Studios is a composer, mixing engineer, and sound designer specializing in Dolby Atmos immersive audio, where he has over 50 Dolby Atmos productions to his name. Besides founding Walk Sound Studio, he provides scoring and audio post-production services for film, television, modern music productions. And his credits include Love is Blind on Netflix, and I don't speak Spanish, so Huecos de Mentiros on Telemundo, and the Idaho College Murders on Discovery Plus. In 2024, he was nominated for the Best Soundtrack at the Hollywood Independent Music Awards. And finally, Thor Legvold of Sonovo Mastering AS. He holds his, it says PSY.D. So is that pronounced Psi-D? Like PhD, but Psi-D? I'm not sure. Anyway, he got that from University of Bergen, Norway, and has a background in auditory perception and audio quality in music. He established Sonovo Mastering in 2003 to deliver high-quality audio for music, film, and television, and to mentor and guide female audio engineers into the industry. He later expanded into multi-channel music production, sound for picture and post-production, and his film credits include the award-winning documentary Humanity Stoked. He has been a champion of surround and immersive music formats since 2006, incorporating immersive audio formats including RO3D, Sony 360RA, and Dolby Atmos. He's a member of the AES Los Angeles Executive Committee, a voting Grammy member, and recently published a chapter in Mastering in Music on Focal Press about surround and immersive formats, co-authored with Darcy Proper. And I think we're going to start with Duane.
Thank you very much, Gary. And let's see, I'm looking for Anthony here. We've got there you are. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to start with the processing of one of Anthony's compositions, and I would like for Anthony to give us a little background on it.
Hello, everybody. It's good to see you guys, all you wonderful, talented people in the music world. So a little behind the scenes of the song that we're going to present is called Once of Love. And this is a TV film soundtrack that was composed with a brief and a tight deadline. And so in this business, once something gets approved, you're not allowed to touch anything. You're not allowed to touch the master, or even within the multi-tracks. Whatever gets approved, it stays. And so in a lot of cases in this business, we release a soundtrack version of whatever will be on TV, right? different mix, different enhancements. And so for this instance, we want to enhance this soundtrack. Now it has nothing to do with TV. Now it's a soundtrack. And I've chosen two stems. If Duane can show the session, we can see how many stems we have. These are pretty much the same amount of stems that I delivered to the editorial department for the film and TV. You can see here we have a few. I think we have what, 11 or 13, Duane?
Track count?
Yeah, stems.
Yes, roughly that. Let's see, 3, 6, 9.
Yeah, so
Approximately between 13 and 15. Yes.
yeah. Okay, so yeah, so these are like what we would deliver, and if we need to enhance anything for like a separate version or whatever, we can use those same stems. Now, a special note for this session here, there's nothing to fix. There's no stems to fix. This is something that was delivered and approved. And so what we're doing here today is picking two of the strongest stems that I believe are very important in this cue. And that would be the strings and the brass stems that you can see them right below. The light sky blue or baby blue with green. If you guys can see that, they're right in the bottom. And then you have a quartet mix, which is actually the quartet master. And then we have the original master that was approved for the TV stuff. So I will let Duane do an A and B between these two masters.
Right. The original master track will is the actual recording that was turned in for the project, and the Dynamic Parametric EQ modified version of it will be this track here called Quartet Mix. Let's go. Okay, so
Those are the two different.
let's take a look at the string stem when this was when this was reworked. I'm going to do a little counter resetting here. going to switch to processing off now. Okay, we're going to pause and let's see. Can you describe, Anthony, some of the motivations behind your tuning choices here?
Yes, sir. So first of all, I want to start with there was no numbers input of this prior to utilizing this product, the Quartet. This was all done by ear. As you can see, that red bump, that was all ear. If you look at it, you'll probably say, "Wow, that's a pretty high bump there." But it was all ear, and this plugin allows me to kind of push the limits, opposed to a different standard EQ. The Quartet is so beautiful with just kind of conducting and sculpting the sound of anything and really going overboard with it, and it sounds beautiful. So as you can see, we have 4 bands, and they're colored. So the first band, we're looking at a red band. So I have it set at 85 hertz, a Q at 2 with a gain at plus 7 dB. And so this band, I have it to add foundational warmth and fullness. As you can see, that red bump, when I was playing with it, and I was just like going around the spectrum there, I heard the cello. I heard it more in detail, and so that motivated me to go there. So the in the cellos and double basses, all the low end part there, that setting to me, it did a good enhancement. This band helps preserve the emotional weight of slower passages as well. With the dynamic set, I believe I have it set at compression and expansion. So it kind of complements both the loud parts and the low parts, and it acts more like a level aware low, a tone shaping, and keeping the low frequencies bloom. Frequencies bloom only when the space allows. So this is like conducting, and whenever a sound or something hits the threshold, it controls it and it tames it and it keeps everything under control. Looking at what band number 2, we have the yellow. We're about 2K with a gain at plus 2 dB, and this band focuses on bowl texture, the expressive friction of the rosin connecting the bowl to the string. So it's more of a musical thing that I'm talking here, because that's what it is. So by boosting this range and using the light compression, I'm able to enhance the intimacy and the player nuance, especially in violas and upper cello. The Q is 0.3, keeps it natural, and it gives it a nice emotion. Yes.
The Q03 is actually in the green band.
Okay, my bad. I'm looking at.
That's what we're. Okay.
There you
now
go.
We're isolated on green now.
We're in green. Okay.
Yep.
My apologies. Okay. Let me make sure. Okay. We are at the green. All right. Give me 1 second, guys. I have. Okay, so we're the frequency of we're in the green.
Yes, okay. And the center frequency is approximately 2.5 K.
Right.
We have a Q of 0.3 and a static boost of roughly between 2.5 and 3.
Yeah. So the purpose for this is to keep the clarity band enhancing articulation in the upper mids um, without the need of dynamic control. A static, like you said, Dwayne, +2 lift at about 5K gives, right? Um,
Yes.
yeah, gives the strings the bite and presence. Useful for both close mic and realism, and ensemble lift with the Q. The Q's at 0, about 0. Oh no, this
Um,
slope,
that is the,
slope. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's
shelf slope.
yeah, and so this it just gives us the clarity on that band, and everything is done by ear. So the numbers, it was something that I had to like look afterwards. So I'm wearing a bunch of different hats as a composer, mixer, and just like kind of doing everything musical, which is I guess, one of the ways to do it. Very musical, be musical at everything, especially when you're dealing with strings. Things can go harsh quickly, and so everything with the eyes closed, just go up. See, like I was talking to Thor. We were just making jokes, just go up and down, sideways and whatever works. But yeah. So we're moving on to the blue. I can see the blue, right? Yeah,
There we go.
about 9K.
Yes.
And we have
And
the
with
slope
that
as well.
gradual slope as well,
Yeah,
it virtually looks like the, the yellow and blue bands are a um, semi-band split, that
yeah,
they meet roughly at um, about 6 or 7K.
correct. So yeah, so on that particular part right there, um, we're adding some cinematic shimmer and polish, as you can hear when you heard the quartet mix. You heard some nice high, some air, helping the strings breathe in the mix. This high shelf is not just brightness, but it just adds some openness, and the separation from the yellow and band is critical, like Dwayne just mentioned. So the yellow center, about what 2K, focuses on presence and bow articulation, just below 5K.
Right.
And the blue lifts the high frequency shimmer and brilliance about 5K using a high shelf.
Mm-hmm.
And this deliberate split just lets me control texture and brightness independently. So one of the many things that Quartet does really well, and it avoids buildup in one zone and helps the strings breathe while maintaining clarity. Um, and and that is my take for the strings. So if there's any, Dwayne, want to touch up on anything from the strings?
Yes, let's play this stem once again and take out various bands so that you can hear what's actually going on here.
Okay.
Okay. Blue is out. I'm going to take red out now. Take green out now. Okay, let's start at measure 1 once
Dwayne,
again.
Dwayne, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
sir.
I need to interrupt you here. Your mic is clicking now. And when it was just on your voice, that wasn't too bad, but now it's on the playback also, which is not, it's kind of ruining the point. So can we work on that? Sorry to interrupt you, but I think we need to face this.
Okay. You think while I work on this that Anthony can describe what he did with the brass?
Perfect. Perfect.
Okay. I'm going to stop sharing now.
Thank you. Anthony?
Yes. Okay. So I'm opening up the session for Duane on my end. But in the meantime, let's talk about the brass. Okay, so you have the brass here. If you allow me to share, can I share?
Oh. Yeah, you'll need to, are you sharing the sound also?
I'm going to turn it off.
Okay. I mean, you can share the sound. You just need to be sure that when you press the share button, you click the share sound thing and stereo.
Okay, can everybody see the quartets?
Yes.
Okay. So we're done with the strings. Well, if there's any questions about the strings, I would rather wait for Duane to come because he has more of a scientific explanation for everything. And he has more of a, he is the maker. So, but let me explain about the brass. So if I could probably just do a quick sound check. We're good with that? Let me see. Okay, quartet mix. No, before the regular one. Okay, so that is the stem for the brass. So in this cue, I enhanced very little. Duane, you can chime in whenever you can if you're available. So very little. You can see like over here, the blue band is lifted. So allow me to just express the best that I can to these bands. So we have a peak filter on band 1 set at 193 hertz. Expansion, I believe we have here both. So we have expansion and compression both working together. And so the purpose of this, it reinforces the body of the brass section and giving horns and low brass the kind of depth that's felt more than heard. The expansion setting allows it to emerge naturally in quieter passages while staying out of the way during the full swells or crescendos. And so that's the purpose of that. If we can show you a little bit of on the quartet mix. So you can see the red band working, working at the expansion and the compression at the same time, working together. Moving on to the yellow band, I have the filter off. Um,
And
yeah,
the dynamics are off too. That is
yeah,
a
yellow.
neutral um, processor on the yellow. How is my voice coming in now?
Sounds
Good.
great. Sounds great.
Okay.
You want to add anything about the?
Let's see. Looks like the blue band is set up as a high shelf um, to emphasize the presence. I think especially the raspy part of the trombones
Yeah,
when that comes in near the middle of the excerpt.
yeah. So to add some final touch of polish. So kind of like remastering that. The standard stems that you see in this session, they were processed through the 2-mix bus, so they're already mastered. So now we're just enhancing these 2 stems. So on the brass, just to add the polish, the sparkle that lets brass float over. Want to keep it like on top of the arrangement. And it opens like the spatial feel and of the section and balances well against percussive hits. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of peaks and valleys, and also with the strings as well. They're working together with the strings, and they share, and they're actually sharing the similar energy, and whatnot. So the quartet allows me to mix, the stems like instruments and carving out space, preserving character and enhancing the emotion dynamically. This is more than just what you see. It's an instrument and so many things that you can do with it. And so this is again, this is from a composer mixer. And if I can use this, anyone in my field, anyone at my level, anyone can use it as well. It does require a lot of playing, a lot of experimenting, and a lot of work. And just, if Duane has anything to add before I end my part.
Yes. Um, if I may take over screen sharing,
Oh, definitely. Sure.
um, uh, I would like to return to the um, strings
Okay.
stem. Okay, here we are. All right. Note that that there is quite a bit of boost going on here. All of the bands are boosted, and the yellow and the blue.
We're not seeing your screen yet.
I thought. Oh, excuse me.
Okay. There you
There
go.
we are. Okay, we have the yellow and the blue set up practically as a band splitter for the dynamics on the yellow band, which covers most of the band, are very, very slight. We have a very high threshold, which is very rarely reached. And this is also true for the blue band as well, but this is split into the majority of the string section and places for presence and bow scrapes and things like that. And we can actually hear these things through something called sidechain search, where we monitor the actual sidechain, which is band filtered to isolate the band that the parametric filter will operate on. So I'm going to soloing. Oops. Okay, this is the contents of the blue band, and if I now add in the yellow band, we will get most of the content of this band. I'm going to take this back out, but so we have this versus the majority of the string, the string section is contained in the yellow band here. Okay. Now I want to look at the difference between the red band and the green band. Now the red band covers the lows, but its dynamics curve has the compression threshold at a fairly high value. But once we play this, once the lows come in consistently, it will spend most of its time above this threshold. Now note on the green band, now the green band has a threshold that is set at a relatively high level as well, but it is set to compress past that threshold, whereas the red band just has a compression ratio of 1:1. So we will not be implementing compression at all after that threshold. However, below that threshold, we're actually undergoing a little bit of dynamic range expansion here. So we are doing a rather severe bump of the low end, but at the same time, once we go below this threshold, we actually want that level to start dropping. And the overall effect is that, yes, we are giving that low end boost, but we actually want that reverb on the low end to not extend and overwhelm the reverb of the rest of the string ensemble. So I'm going to now take the processing in and out on the red band. Actually, I'm going to fast forward to measure 16. Now, if we were to take this threshold that connects to the compression threshold out, if we just set this to have the compression threshold active, okay, so I think that the motivation behind this is that, yes, we want to do a significant boost to the low end, but we don't want that low end to linger after the notes have been played. So, so relative to the other bands, we want to drop that band level um, once we go below this threshold. And this is in comparison to the green, where we have just a little bit of a static lift here, and we have a fairly high compression threshold. But beyond that, we just want a little bit of compression, such that um, rather than lessening or tapering the release effect on the low end, we want to taper the attack on the green band, on the mostly the violas going into the violins. Um, any questions on this so far?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
let's have it.
gonna wait a minute. I'm gonna show you my face because maybe my face is important. How do musicians feel about you manipulating their performance this way? No, I'm gonna go away.
I'm gonna answer this.
Yes, please.
Okay, can you repeat that question again? I heard musician, so I want to make sure I hear it right. Can you repeat that question again, Bob?
How do the musicians in this performance feel about your manipulation of their performance?
Well, in the business that we're in, this usually happens when like a re-recording mixer would get these stems, and they want to make it fit within the effects and dialogue. Sometimes a lot of things might change last minute, and so this is a perfect example of maybe something they probably added an effect there, a bomb or anything that might interfere, or the stem might interfere with that effect. So you would do something like this to kind of make it work. And so an understanding that once you deliver these stems, there's a reason why we deliver the stems, and this is just a perfect example. And everything is always open to like change in any situation. So as long as what we want, Bob, is for our music to stay in the picture. So opposed to just saying, you know what, do not touch my stems, they're gonna be like, okay, delete. We're not gonna use that stem. And so then which it does happen.
Thanks.
No
I
matter
think that answered the question. I don't drag this on. I just wondered about. I mean, this is like a level of manipulation that.
Yeah.
I'd like to add one thing to that, because my clients come to me to sound their best. They want to sound awesome. So whatever I need to do to make them sound their best, I do. And sometimes clearing stuff out is part of that. That's just the nature of the business.
I'm willing to let go of this. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, so I have a question. What are the controls here? Because I noticed there's one marked ROT, and I'm curious as to how, let's start on the red band. The middle part of that has a different slope to where the compression and the expansion is. How is that slope determined?
Okay. Both the compression threshold and the expansion threshold are offsetable in the relative gain scale. Okay.
Right.
We call this dashed line the line of neutral gain. That is where the output level is equal to the input level. So on top of this is boost, and below this is a cut. So for both of these thresholds, they can be offset on that gain scale while keeping the the threshold level constant.
Ah, interesting. Okay. So
I
the
think this
threshold is
was,
the inflection point, basically.
yes.
Okay. Huh.
And this one was minus 18. So
Got it. Okay. So that's
so yes, they are
basically at that point it's going back to 1-to-1.
right.
Huh. Clever.
And let's say that the expansion ratio applies to below this threshold level. So if
Sure.
I wanted to give it some positive expansion,
Okay.
I can do the same for compression. It is above this threshold. So, and that's what we have here. Okay. So, um, um, the intent for this dynamics curve being applied to this band is that, yes, we do want a significant boost here, but once that note is finished, the
Sure.
reverb within that band is overwhelming everything else. So we want to just taper off that um, reverb decay relative to everything else.
Okay. So what is the ROT?
Okay, this is called a rotation point. Let's just
Okay.
solo in on our yellow band here. Okay, so what this is that actually let me,
Can I interfere for a second? It would be more helpful if you shared your screen during this discussion.
Now we've got here he has.
Oh, I don't see
yeah,
it. What do I know?
You need
Sorry.
a second screen.
I had the same problem, Matt. You just have to click on the up at the top. It says Duane Wise's screen. You click on that little thing, it'll appear again.
Thanks, John. Sorry, guys.
Scroll left.
okay. So this is a special compression mode called rotation point. So what we have here is a pivot through which the compression sloped line must intersect. So now we are manipulating this point here. So we move this point down to an input level. Let's move it to
Okay.
minus 30.
Sure.
So
Okay.
it'll be even with this line. And then we offset that up and down on the relative gain scale such that we will keep that level, that input level constant.
Got it.
Now,
Okay. Ah,
now the compression line will um, will always intersect this point. It will intersect it to the point where the relative gain relative to our dashed line becomes plus 12. That is what this gain at threshold parameter actually means.
now is the
So
threshold, sorry, is the threshold the same as a rotation point, or is that?
no, this is a, we have our regular mode where we just set a hard compression threshold.
Mhm.
When we're in rotation point, the threshold is virtually set such that when this line reaches a relative boost cut of what's specified here, it will then put a virtual threshold here. And that's the main reason why this graphic doohickey is hollowed out rather than solid. So I can also mouse these things so you can see a little bit more what was actually.
Okay, I see, yeah.
But I can then put this into the negative part, and we'll see that this line still must go through this pivot point, this rotation point, but it always puts the virtual threshold at that gain offset. Any questions on?
And then you've also got the expansion down below that?
Yes, but
you're not using that at the moment. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And
so,
if I were to turn that on, then the thresholds would both connect together.
Right. Duane, so if you actually right click on those on the dynamic part, you can hand pick also.
Right.
It's a shortcut.
Okay.
Huh. Or just the expansion or just the compression.
Okay. So each band has got a detector and a dynamics processor.
Yes.
And they're working on the same band.
Yes.
Neat.
Okay. So let me put. Yes.
Sorry, there's a couple comments in the chat from Brian. He says, looks like the ratio between thresholds is automatically set to fit everything together. And EQ is not nearly as drastic as cutting and splicing. Even microphones and placement during the recording could have affected the tone, such that dynamic EQ might actually serve to restore what was heard by someone in the room or not.
That is an excellent point, and yes, it is quite possible to accomplish this through dynamic parametric EQ. But an example of that will probably not be presented at this session. And let's see.
Duane, can you also tell us what this screen we're looking at is? There's Pro Tools underneath it. Is all of this Pro Tools, or is there something else?
Yes.
All of this is in Pro Tools, available in Pro Tools. Okay, thank you.
Right.
So if I may answer that, what's his name?
Brian?
Brian. Is it Brian?
Yes.
Dan asked that last part, but Brian asked the previous part.
Oh, okay, hold on. Give me 1 second. Okay, while I look, hold on. Yeah. Anyway, hold on. So, if you guys are interested, as a pay it forward, if you guys are interested in the presets that were made, hopefully, maybe Duane can perhaps gift it with, if you guys ask him directly. We have the string stem and the brass stem that I worked on and I shared with Duane. So if you guys are interested in those presets to like play around with it, and you guys can tweak it on your on your own music or whatever you're working on, feel free to ask Duane. So with my permission, I'll pay it forward, give those presets for you guys So, but yeah, so absolutely, and I love that you brought up the mic placement, because that's the part that we don't always get to touch once we've handed the stems. So when I'm using the dynamic EQ in a case like this, especially with strings, it's less about correction and more about reconnecting to what the room might have originally felt like. So sometimes it's tonal restoration, so other times it's more like shaping emotion that got lost between takes and transfers. And Quartet gives me that flexibility without locking me into the static decisions. I don't know if that makes any sense.
So Brian wrote in the chat, Quartet Dyne PEQ is a plugin that probably does not come with Pro Tools. So is that what we're looking at?
It doesn't come with Pro Tools. It's a third-party plugin.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay, so which part of this is that plugin? This screen that you just moved?
That's an insert.
I can.
Yeah, he has it in an insert.
Right.
Okay.
We have this string stem track, and this is on the processor insert for this particular track.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And we're looking at this instance of a dynamic parametric EQ processor, 4-band in this case.
Great. So
Awesome.
anyone getting this donated thing that Anthony mentioned offering would need this program to use.
Anyone that's serious about
Yes.
anyone that's extremely serious about the plugin, I want to share those stem presets. So you
Great.
reach out to Duane, and he has my permission to do so as a courtesy, as love for the audio community. Because people do it for me, people pay it forward to me, and I want to pay it forward to other people. So this might help someone, and play around with it.
Thank you, Anthony.
No problem.
And Jameer has his hand up.
Okay.
Jameer?
Question.
Unmute
Yes,
yourself.
thank you.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, in certain circumstances for specific instruments, do you normally start off with a preset and then kind of tune to taste depending on the track, or do you automatically like have your excuse me, there's certain type of regions that you have the bands on, for the specific dynamics?
Who's that, for Duane or for me?
For either of you, I guess.
Okay.
Well,
so
there are.
Yeah, go ahead, Duane.
Let's see. There are.
Duane, your
presets.
clicking is funky again. Can we have Anthony answer it while you work on your audio?
Okay,
sorry.
sure.
It's hard to understand you when that's happening.
So, if I may share something to answer, who am I speaking with?
Jameer.
Jameer, I think you we're in LinkedIn, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for coming. I invited Jameer, and he came. So, thanks for coming through, my brother. And he's from Jersey as well. So, Jersey in the house, baby. And everybody else that I heard that's from Jersey, let's go. It's 10:28 p.m. here. Okay. So, if you allow me to share, so I can show Jameer something real quick, is that okay?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do this. Okay, so normally in the music world, this is my template right here. Okay, and these are the print tracks. We don't need this. So basically, in this folder right here, we have multi-tracks. You'll see blue, green, some type of green, gray. The grays are like the aux, they're like the group aux. And you don't see much of processing happening, because I like to keep, the instruments as natural as possible, unless I have to fix something in the mix. Anything that needs to be fixed, it gets fixed before it goes into my template. So everything gets separated into food groups. So over here, you can see my aux groups over here, right? You have effects, strings, choir, perk, and orchestral shorts for this song, and horns. This is a different song. And then on the bottom, you'll see quartet. So the quartet is handling my final processing. And when I start the quartet, I started with everything is flat. So you see everything is flat, and then I'll just adjust as I go, because I also print stems away from the 2-bus processing, and I also print stems with the 2-bus processing. So the stems that get printed away from the 2-bus processing will have quartet here to tame whatever mess I'm doing. And then when I'm this is my stem masters. You also have the quartet here to just polish the stems that are not in the 2-bus processing. So when I do mix, I have them flat over here, and then I adjust the frequencies, and I'll add whatever I gotta add, before it reaches to the 2-bus. So I just go flat, and then I just adjust. So you can see here, you can see these quartets, they all have like a bit different, almost similar, but a little bit of adjustments. You get what I'm saying? So I hope that answers your question. Just wanted to share that template with you since I had it open. That's what that is. That's how I use quartet. So started off flat, and then I just tweak things around until it feels good and it sounds right.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
There was a question in the chat from Santiago. Any chance there's a quartet version for Windows?
Guessing Duane is still rebooting or whatever it is.
Well, if it's a plugin, it shouldn't matter what you're running on.
That's true. Pro Tools runs on Windows and Mac, and most people who release plugins will release it for both.
Well, he said not at this time.
Yep, he popped it in the chat. Not at this time.
One good thing to know regarding that is that it's currently audio unit and AAX. So it'll run in Pro Tools on the AAX system, and it'll run on any Mac-based production system that supports audio units. So for example, I use Resolve, and Resolve supports both VST and audio units, but I also have Nuendo, and Nuendo only supports VST. It won't support audio units. So it's good to check with your Logic supports it. I believe Reaper does, and many others.
Anthony, I think you have the floor here if you have anything more to share.
Okay. What makes so as a person that wears different hats in a lot of projects with I just wanted to share what makes quartet special, and why we're here talking about it, so it combines the precision of parametric EQ with the responsiveness of a dynamic processor, all within the same band. Most dynamic EQs out there are graphic, fixed frequencies, fixed cues, but the quartet lets me choose the exact frequency, shape, and behavior of each band. So I can apply compression, expansion musically. Everything to me is musically. It's not, fixing stuff. It's that to me happens before the mix. So, but in my case, everything is musically, so it reacts like a real player. You don't have to automate. When it hits a threshold, boom. It works for you as a conductor, as I mentioned before. So it's not just a processor. It's a cliche. It's a game changer, like many YouTubers out there say. But I'm sculpting the stems that need to breathe and move with emotions, as you guys heard with the brass and stems. And also, there's always room for improvement. So, like I mentioned, I believe to Bob, there's a bunch of stems there that you could apply the quartet and make minor changes. You could do, tad bit changes here and there, and anything could sound better. I think that, as we all know, there's always room for improvement. So anything could always sound better. And the quartet to me is just, it's more than just what you see. It's just, it gives you so many things. And I don't think Duane Tor knows the peak, the true peak limiter in the bottom of the quartet, that
Mm.
you could also work at that level as well with the true peak limiter. That I think
Yeah.
Duane or Tor can just tell you guys much more about that.
Super transparent and super quick. And
Yeah.
you can dial in quite a bit of gain without it getting nasty at all. Completely transparent. Um, I could add to this while we give Duane a little bit of time to get his audio fixed. So we have basic tools, right? We have EQ. EQ is a volume control, right? We're adjusting volume for a specific frequency, but it's fixed. It doesn't change. It doesn't move unless we automate that, which would take a lot of time if we're going to go through, especially a film mix, and automate from scene to scene or track to track or whatever. That would take forever. And we have compression, which is also volume control. When the level passes a certain peak, we turn it down by a certain amount. And that's typically across the board, although now we have multi-band compressors that will split those into separate bands. But there's a timbre change, at least to my ears, when we're using that. There are a few that I do use, like the Vice, that are very transparent, but it's still doing dynamics processing. The cool thing, from my understanding and the way I use Quartet, and we'll get to that in a bit, is that it's an EQ, but we're using the dynamics detectors and all of the slopes and the shapes and all of that to determine how to apply the EQ and when, based on level rather than frequency. So we dial in the frequency on the top part of the plugin, and we'll do a walkthrough of that in a bit. But then we can use the compressor as the detector and the control, so that I might want some nice warmth around 300 or 250 up to a certain point. And if at a certain point it gets to be too much, I might want that to be pulled down a little bit without anyone noticing it. And that's what this plugin excels at, is doing these really transparent repairs that you wouldn't be able to get away with, at least not with the tools that I have otherwise. And I have a lot of really nice, both analog and digital tools. And this is kind of unique. It kind of does things that nothing else really will do, which is one of the reasons I have it on pretty much every session that I do anyway. So, so you get, I think the real key here is that you can use it as just a straight EQ, and it's a straight EQ. You can use it as a regular compressor, and it's a regular compressor. It's very transparent. There's no sound to it. It's very quick, and there's no overshoot or anything like that. But when you combine the compressor expansion detectors to apply a specific EQ of a specific amount and in a specific gain and range, using the compressor controls to actually adjust the EQ dynamically, that's where the real power comes in. And that's where we can really dig in and do some crazy stuff that is completely transparent that no one ever hears, and that makes things sound great. That's kind of my my quick little overview, if that helps.
All
Cool,
right,
Jane. Go ahead.
my sound brick should be fixed, and we have a question from Jamie.
Yes. Given what Anthony said about there always being room for improvement, I couldn't agree more. How how do you know when to stop, or is that just determined by the deadline?
Well,
Oh, okay, you go. Is it for me or for
um,
Duane?
For whoever.
Okay, go ahead, Duane.
you first, please.
I don't know when to stop actually. I think that when I get an email back, whether it's I might get some notes from the 5 people that need to approve it. For example, um, I'm a freelance composer for Bleeding Fingers Music, and so they have to go through their circle of elite Illuminati composers, and then to their clients. You know what I'm saying? So it has to get approved by the 5 people or 4 that's involved within the Bleeding Fingers, and then their client, and the client could be Extreme Music. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that music library, Extreme Music. So that's a client, and then Bleeding Fingers, and then I'm the composer, and so I could get a message that says, hey, relax with your master. You're too hot, and I will have to go back and adjust that. And I can get another email that says, hey, your strings are this or your brass is that. So I would stop when it's good for them. And if I'm doing something for myself, I would stop when I'm close to my reference, because I mix with references. So I would have something like, for example, I go out there. I'll when I'm mixing my soundtracks, I'm listening to Alan Meyerson. I don't listen to nobody else. And I know it's crazy. But when I feel like I'm close to Alan Meyerson's sound, that's when I know I'm done. And I'm like, okay, so I'll compare. I'll do an A/B, and more of like the sonic overall signature of the soundtrack that I'm working on. That it's like the same style as my references and the people I look up to. That's how I know when I'm done. But I would never get into a project and just figure and just guess if I'm done or not. So it's with the clients, it's when they tell me it's good to go, and if I'm working on something else, I feel like I'm close to my reference, that's when I stop and I continue forward.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I have been told multiple times that that dynamic parametric EQ, um, um, especially as embodied in this product, is gives the user a very versatile and abundant set of ropes to actually do your work with. You can actually use those ropes to make something beautiful, but I've also been told you can use them to hang yourself. And you can carry things a little too far, and this does take getting used to. But once you get the hang of it, then you should be able to directly translate your ear and your thinking about what you're hearing to the processor.
Thank you. It's like anything else, I guess.
How are we doing on time, Jess?
We are a little over an hour into the first couple segments here. So
Okay.
We're fine.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to my slideshow then, if you don't mind. And once the slideshow is done, then we can switch over either to more of Anthony or to Tor. And I am not hearing any dissent, so I'm going to start sharing my screen. Okay, so all right, if you would like your own copy of this slideshow, which I am just going to rip through very, very fast, but this is the URL you can use to download your own copy. This is the URL for the developer of the product, and it's just /DPEQPRO PDF. And this is the email address at which you can reach me. Okay. This all boils down to a fairly simple question. At the time that George Massenburg presented his paper at the AES convention in 1972, describing his concept of the parametric EQ, the adoption of that architecture in recording studios was very, very rapid, and it stayed consistently high from then on. At the same time, there have been multiple attempts to build and market parametric EQ boxes designed for your home stereo or for your car stereo playback systems. And each time that they've tried this, they get very little reaction from their attempts to market this EQ architecture for the home stereo market. And the question is why? Why would that happen? Is there something that the home stereo user is not really getting about parametric EQ? My contention is that the answer is no, that there is wisdom in crowds and that the parametric EQ is not just all that good of a fit for when you are in the context of just listening to stuff on your home stereo system. Okay, this is a rather busy slide. I'm just going to boil it down to this. If I were working front of house, what type of EQs would I want on my front of house console? If it were the master fader that feeds the console output to the house, then I would want an EQ that is based on graphic EQ, and that principle takes the entire spectrum, breaks it up into subbands, and then you can adjust each subband. So this is an EQ model that fits not only loudspeakers, but it also fits our the characteristics of our own ears. It's just breaking things into little subbands. Those subbands are fixed, and then you can just manipulate the behavior of the subbands. However, for the instrument tracks that are feeding into that front of house console, I would want each track to have a at least one band of parametric EQ on it. And the reason for that is because rather than following an audiological model like graphic EQ does, parametric EQ follows an acoustical model such that we are making adjustments to acoustical elements that have numerous and extremely varied resonant modes and resonant nulls. And how this can happen is in something in acoustic research called Chladni patterns, which are we take things like panels of guitars, we clamp the edges and we vibrate it, and then we spread sand on that plate. And when we get to a resonant mode, that sand will all settle in a particular pattern. And that pattern is only made at a very particular frequency. So each one of these can be thought of as an individual bandpass filter. And these bandpasses do not have uniform Q. There can be very broadband ones and narrowband ones. And that these relationships are not harmonic. Very rarely does it actually turn out in that fashion. That the total response of this plate is literally the sum of these individual bandpass filters. And each filter is a second order biquad system, and it's a sum of them, such that there's definitely variances between not only individual instruments, but individual recording environments, and that if you want to correct one relative to the other, you would not be going after fixed bands. The other acoustical part, which we probably won't have an example for, but somebody mentioned this in the questions, is if we take a look at something called the Fletcher-Munson equal loudness curves. And I've taken this graph from Wikipedia, and each line is a constant perceived level of sound. X-axis here is the frequency of a sinusoid, and the y-axis is a sound pressure level. The sound pressure level necessary to make a perceived level from a sinusoid at a particular frequency. But what this thing does tell us in general is that there is a band where our ears are most sensitive. And that's at this middle band here between about 2K and 5K. But to each side of this band, not only the low end, but this Wikipedia graph doesn't illustrate it all that well, but it's also on the other end as well, is that you need more sound pressure level to achieve that same perceived loudness. So for the lows and for the highs, for it to sound just as loud, you would need to crank those levels up. What this also implies is on both ends, the distance between these lines get more and more narrow, rather than our regular baseline level here in our most sensitive region. And what the shrunken distance between these lines indicate is that we are undergoing dynamic range expansion outside of this center band. Any questions so far?
Not exactly a question, more a comment. I was just thinking earlier that dynamic EQ could be interesting for in the modern age, classical composers and conductors, I think, learned, even without knowing about Fletcher and Munson, learned by intuition and experience how to compensate for these curves. But in the modern day, having something to do the process automatically could be useful.
Right. Very good point. Okay, so a traditional dynamics processor is a fairly simple beast. We have a sidechain signal, which is optionally connected to the audio input, but it can also be an independent signal. We do a level measurement on that to get an input level. We map that input level to a desired output level via what we call a dynamics curve. Output level minus input level equals the effective gain that we wish to apply to our actual audio signal. So that dynamic gain signal is then fed to a dynamic gain stage, such as a voltage controlled amp. Now, if we wish to make a dynamics processor based on a parametric EQ, we can take that traditional design and make two modifications to it. Step one would be to replace that broadband gain stage with a single parametric filter. So rather than modulating gain, this signal then modulates additional boost cut. So we have a parametric filter with a static boost cut setting. And then our signal just modulates additional boost cut on top of that static level. Step two, though, is that we take the sidechain signal and we pre-filter it such that we're actually doing the input level measurement on the band that the parametric filter will actually operate on. So this pre-filter is intrinsically derived from the parametric filter. If this type is a peak dip, then this pre-filter would be its corresponding bandpass. It would share the same values of center frequency and Q. If this were a low shelf, this pre-filter would be its corresponding low pass, and it would share the same cutoff frequency. And so it's that band isolated sidechain that is subject to the level measurement. So this is the input level, but it's an input level specifically for this parametric band. All right, this is another busy one, but most multi multi-band EQs or um, uh, most multi-band dynamics processors or dynamic EQs you will find base their architecture on the graphic EQ or the crossover network. And in my opinion, there's a fairly direct reason for that is from a computer science standpoint, that actually is a more convenient way to do your processing. It is an ideal architecture for implementing your splitted bands in parallel and then summing the result after you have done all of your bandpass processing on your individual bands. And this is also well fit for what we call the short time Fourier transform. But I also want to point out that the short time Fourier transform has the side effect of Fourier transform can only be applied to a block of samples. You really can't process sample by sample by sample if you were working in the spectral domain. And that means that we are block averaging our input levels, not only the input levels, but the reaction to them for an entire block of samples, meaning that our ability to react to input levels in a dynamic fashion must be done at a lower bandwidth than the actual samples um, coming in. If you base your processing on a parametric EQ, the architecture of the parametric EQ forces you to do your processing in the time domain. So that means that you're actually going to spend a bit more computationally to do the processing here. But the upside is that you can calculate your levels in real time and react to them in real time. So at the bottom of this slideshow, it's like when you're in the recording studio, think in an acoustical manner. But if you're in the recording studio and you know your way around a parametric EQ, you already are thinking in that fashion, whether you realize it or not. So just simply carry on. But when you extend EQ as applied in the recording studio to a dynamic EQ, consider that you might be better off basing the EQ on parametric rather than graphic. And the last part is that you've seen the UI to the processor. Just wanted to show you a little bit of what the signal flow maps into our thing here. So we have the sidechain feeding the pre-filter, which isolates the band that the parametric filter is specified to. That implements a level measurement. The bottom 4 squares on the plots are the dynamics curves, and that curve is represented by a solid line. We've measured our input level, and input level is represented on the x-axis here. Y-axis is the desired output level. So we fill in the dynamics curve up to the point where we've measured the input level with that band's color. And then we have our line of neutral gain, and we shade in that area from neutral gain to the edge of the curve up to the point where we've measured the input level, so that the flat edge of that shaded area represents the effective boost cut that we want to apply to the parametric filter at that time. So the transfer functions for our parametric bands are in the plot above the dynamics curves. The solid line represents the transfer function of the parametric filter with the static boost cut set. And when that boost cut is dynamically changed, that's reflected in the edge of the shaded area starting at the solid line. So the edge of that shaded area to the solid line is also the boost cut level. They won't be on the same scale between these two plots, but you can see the action that's actually going on here. Are there any questions on the slideshow?
Brian had a couple of comments in the chat asking, what about sliding window STFT? That would have higher bandwidth at the cost of quite a bit more processing. And then he followed up and said, there are algorithms for calculating sliding window FFT that update the output on every individual input sample. I have not seen this implemented in anything recently, though. The articles I read were from decades ago.
Trying to remember sliding window frequency transforms. That might be referring to what we now know as the short short-term Fourier transform. That is just doing Fourier transforms at regular intervals, just moving that windowed input block along by our time hop between Fourier transforms. And then you can operate on the spectrum and then reconstitute those samples into a time series, and then just overlap and add the result of that processing.
Brian, do you want to chime in?
Well, I think it's sort of a distraction, so I won't get into the detail of it. But yeah, the point is made that FFTs work on a window, and because of that window, you have a lower resolution of parameter.
Right. And with that, I think we should hand things over to Thor.
Did you not want to do your quick demo of the?
Let me follow your bit with the
Okay.
quick demo and your questions.
Sure.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, Duane, you want to stop sharing now?
I will.
Thank you. Thor?
Yeah, thank you. Let's see, original sound and share desktop to. Can everyone see my screen? Yep, good. Okay, for those of you who aren't familiar with Resolve, I'm just going to walk you through it really quickly. We have our tracks here. You can see my mouse pointer, by the way? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So we have all the tracks laid out here. I've pulled them together. I mean, we could zoom in, but we don't need to do that. So I have about 80 tracks. This is a re-recording session for a film, a documentary film. It's dialogue driven. And I have used quartet, I would say sparingly, but I would also add that for those who mentioned Alan Meyerson, this is something I also learned from him, and this is the same thing he does, or close enough. So we have all of our tracks here. We have a bunch, our mixer tracks here. We don't need to get into those. And the buses are here. So I have everything routed into 3 main buses. One is the dialogue bus. The next is the music bus. And then we have an effects bus. So everything, all of the reverbs and everything else, plus all the source tracks end up in one of those 3 buses, which is then feeding the Atmos master. Here we have the Atmos master. For those of you who don't know Resolve, it's here. And then I can choose which Atmos output I want. So this is actually binaural. It sounds wonky in headphones because I mixed this for theatrical, but it still reasonably translates pretty well. And then I can choose the output, and it's a main stereo output since it's a binaural output. We have a video viewer here, which I can pop out so we can have a look at the actual film. And what I'm going to do, because of both of the time, but also because this is a session that has a lot of automation and a lot of things are locked, and it takes a lot of time to go in and unlock everything, I'm just going to play some things back and point your attention to a few things. Show of hands, has anyone seen a Nolan film recently? Christopher Nolan. Anyone? No one's seen a Christopher Nolan film? He's famous for the dialogue being kind of hard to understand because of all the stuff going on around. Well, and that's one of the things that Alan Meyerson is really well known for, is he focuses obviously on the score, but on making space for everything. So making a little bit of space. So what I've done is I've used quartet, similar to what Anthony's done, but not so much to boost, but rather to cut in specific areas where the dialogue lives, so that when the actors are speaking, the people being interviewed, we can hear them. The music and the effects don't step on what they're saying. And it's very subtle, but that's what I was looking for. I don't want it to be super obvious. So we have, again, main buses are here. We've got our Atmos master. Here is the dialogue master bus, and there's a quartet there. This is what I use. Let me figure out where it went. I have multiple screens here, so I just got to put it on the right screen so everyone can follow along. There we go. So this, on the dialogue bus itself, and you can see I have about, 15, 20 tracks of dialogue here. Those are the ones that are colored green.
Is it possible to make that bigger? Sorry, Tor.
To make this bigger.
This
yeah.
quartet.
Quartet, not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's all good.
Sorry,
yeah,
if I can jump in. At the top of the screen where you see Tor's screen, there's 3 dots in a circle. You can change your view there and actually zoom in if you need. It's a personal view preference.
So cool.
I'll be
Awesome.
darned.
I didn't know about that. That's great. That's good to know.
Cool, Jess.
So what I've used this for, and it's a little bit of a process, but that's sometimes what you have to do, is I've used this, as Duane pointed out, and we'll review with us again later, to do the sidechain search, right? Clicking on one band and finding out where does the dialogue sit specifically, where's the fundamental, and where is the clarity and the fricatives and the that part, and then found those areas using this basically just to measure. Because of the way Resolve deals with sidechains, I haven't been able to. Ideally, I would like to set it up so that it's a sidechain and it's sending that signal to the other quartets automatically. It won't work as things are currently architected. It's not Duane's fault. It's more with the way the software works here in this system specifically. But you'll see here I have my music master, which is feeding my Atmos master right here, and there's a quartet on it, which will bring up. That is the quartet for the music. And a little bit, so music is blue, and a little bit further down on the orange, we have also our FX master Atmos, which is feeding our Atmos master. And here we have another quartet. So we have one for each. And these change as we go through the timeline based on the scene, based on the people talking. We have male dialogue, a few tracks of male dialogue, a few tracks of female dialogue, plus some other specific people who are talking depending on the scene and the point of the film. But what I've done is I've measured, again, the main areas of fundamental and fricative or intelligibility on the dialogue track, and then put those frequencies and amounts, dialed them in to the quartets that are on each of the main stems, the music stem and the effects stem. So that when someone is talking, if the music gets too loud or there's some frequencies that might step on the dialogue, quartet will automatically pull those down. And again, it's using EQ, so there's no change of timbre through a compression. It's using EQ to determine how much EQ and how far to apply it and when to apply it based on the level detectors. Does that make sense so far? Yeah. Okay.
Wait a minute. So you're taking the information from the audio, from the vocal track, and ducking the others?
Yes, exactly.
So you can basically take the sidechain input to quartet from a different quartet or a different input?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And that's where things get really cool, because it's not ducking by using compression, because when I hear compression doing ducking, I hear a timbre change. When I hear EQ being applied, to my ears, it's very transparent. It's much less intrusive than a traditional ducker where there's a compressor clamping down on things and you kind of hear everything kind of gets squished and then comes up again. Because it's an EQ and because it's frequency dependent, it's like sculpting very specifically at very specific points in time. When either music or effects get to a certain point, it will pull those down to maintain intelligibility. So if we listen to the dialogue here, I'll let it run through a few of the initial interviews at the beginning of the film. And if you listen to the dialogue, you hear the dialogue is just straight. There is nothing is stepping on it. And if we look at the display here, we'll see it pulling down, especially around the green, especially not as much on the blue, but a little bit on the green. Let me change the settings to make it easier to see. There we go. And the contrast, let's see, that should make it a little bit easier. And we'll just play a few minutes. I figured from Anthony's presentation, I really feel that he hit a lot of the high points. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I did want to kind of illustrate how this is really, really useful in re-recording mixing, but also score mixing and other kind of applications where you need to be very transparent, very quick, and have a really high degree of control over things. So let me see. I have a control panel here in front of me, so I'm just going to get all this set up. Can you hear that?
I've been through the fire. I've come a long way from skateboarding and stereotypes and being labeled as an outcast or as someone that's rebellious
just pulling down here and
because I chose to ride a skateboard. I mean, forget about the way I ride the skateboard or the way I hold my skateboard. None of that mattered. It was just the fact that you had a skateboard that made you labeled as someone that didn't fit in.
When I first started skating, my dad just got out of jail too, so he was like, wait, weren't you playing football? Now you're on this white boy sport wearing tight pants. But I've always played both sides, so my mom's white and my dad's black. So I'm like that kid right in the middle, bro, where it's some days I wasn't wide enough for my white friends, or some days.
So you can see it's pulling down pretty significantly in spots, just to keep that clarity.
It was a huge coming out story. I just always stayed authentic to myself, and I feel like because I was such just a hard ass and so rebellious growing up, I probably didn't associate fear with that, but
is that clear? Can you hear the dialogue and how it really kind of stands out in front of everything else? We still have some really good things going on in the bottom and in the lower frequencies, the bass drums and everything. But when some of the piano and some of the other notes come in, they would otherwise step on the vocals, right? And we'd have a little bit of a problem with intelligibility and understanding what it is the main character is saying. And since this is a dialogue-driven film, it's really important that stands out and that we're able to follow what people are saying. I'd have not a lot of light here. I should have thought about that earlier. But we're going to move to a new scene. Let's see. 139. 38. Let's see what we got here. And on this one, we have, let's see if we can play. Nope.
For me, and it was.
Let's see. Give me just a second. Actually, you know what? I'm going to move just a second. I'll be right back. Helps to have light on both sides, not just one. Now I can actually read. So we're going to go to another scene where there are some pretty heavy background noises going on. Let's see, and that's at 139, 38. Boom, go. So there's a man who's interviewed here, and this time, same thing is going on, but this time it's the effects stem that is really getting pulled down. And let's see if we can do something interesting. Let me go to the tracks here, if we can pull them up, and we can see if we can put this into preview mode. Preview. Give me a second. I've got hardware controllers across my desk. Just have to move around a little bit. Where we got FX Master, Auto, MX Master, Auto. No, it's not going to do it. Okay, we'll just play it, and again, keep an eye here, and you'll see that there's some things going on there to keep the dialogue open. I was hoping we could put it into preview mode, which will allow me to change and override the automation. It doesn't seem to be cooperating at this moment, because it would be nice to pull down some of the wave sounds in the background. But let's have a listen and see.
For me, and it was baby steps, you know, but first thing I needed to learn is to enjoy fighting the fear. Like,
and there's a little bit of glitch on the playback. I'm not sure why, but
not thinking about the fear as about this monster and a bad thing, but as, wow, I'm gonna get some adrenaline out of it, you know?
So it's not doing much here,
when you give up.
But we'll get
That's
to a
the only
scene
time you fail.
where it really kicks in.
If you really want something, you can do it. Yeah, it might hurt. It
Right
might
there.
be boring and monotonous at points. It might be whatever. But if you learn to push yourself and dig deep through those points, eventually you will achieve what you're going for.
See that?
What do they say? The most dangerous idea is the only idea? There's always another way to look at something. And you have to give yourself the time to actually, okay, I'm caught up in this, I'm going crazy
See here, it's pulling down a lot of the
Step
lower end
out
as
of
well.
that for just a second and look at that, and maybe look at the challenge that you're dealing with from a different perspective.
So that the waves don't override the dialogue in that section. It's clear so far what's going on here? So we're ducking, but we're ducking differently than we would with a compressor. And it sounds great. It sounds so transparent. Because you can't do this with a compressor. Because the compressor is the detector and the control signal, but it's actually applying an EQ based on the compressor input, which is amazing. I'll show you guys one last scene, and then we'll move over to my main thing. So my main thing for the last 20 years has been mastering, music mastering. And I had bands who started doing music for film and television and stuff, and nobody knew how to do surround. So I got called, hey, could you help us? We need a surround mix for television and yeah, I love it. Let's see. Let's move to one. Looks clear. 148, 49, 00. Boom. So we'll look at this one, and we'll see which of these. The one thing that, unfortunately, I don't know if it's a resolve thing or if it's a quartet thing, but only the active instance will show what's actually going on. Let's move out of preview mode. We don't need that. Move back to mix mode. Edit. Okay. So the thing is that the settings are changed through the automation throughout the film. But if we end up on a scene where we don't want this to step on what's going on, it won't. Because as long as the music bed or the effects bed isn't coming in the way of the frequencies that we've defined based on going through and tracking each of these actors, we're good. So let's watch a little bit more.
This earth is all we have. We need to think about it holistically. Not even just, well, did I pollute this river here? Let me fix it and all is done. No, water molecules go everywhere. Pollutants in air travels everywhere. So this idea that somehow I have this country and I just have to worry about what's happening here, I don't have to worry about anywhere else. Of course you do. We're in this coordinated ecosystem. You want to tribalize yourself by putting lines in the sand? Dividing you by skin color and religion and race and who you have sex with, and all these ways we divide ourselves, Earth will have none of it.
The environment, that's not a left or right issue, that's a human issue. We're all impacted by that issue. It's not even a discussion.
So as you can see here, there were a few areas that popped up, especially the bubbles under the water, which hit the FX bus, but not anything else. You'll also notice that I'm using the rotation point. I prefer that in many cases because you can, as Duane pointed out, you can pin a point, a point frequency-wise and level-wise, and everything else rotates around it, rather than a traditional compressor where you just have a line and everything under or over that line gets affected. It's a lot more. You can do a lot more with it. That was what I planned to just show. Are there any questions?
These videos are pretty cool. Are they viewable anyplace?
We are working on distribution now. We were accepted to 41 festivals around the world, I think 8 or 9 or 10 different countries, and we won 20 of the festivals that we entered. This is the first film that this producer has made. He's in his 50s, and he just had a bug in his soul that he had a film he had to make. He had something he needed to say. And I got pulled into the project because they wanted to keep everything Resolve, and I'm Fairlight certified, and I work exclusively in Resolve. So I ended up working with them, and it's been fantastic. It's amazing. So when we do get distribution, I will be letting the world know because it is such an amazing film. It's such an amazing and important message, I think, for the world, but especially for the country as it stands now.
Are all 3 excerpts that you've shown us one film?
Yeah.
Wow. The Tony Hawk and the Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah. Film is called Humanity Stoked. So it's about the future of humanity seen from the perspective of skateboarders who have been outcasts, who have been kind of, not anymore, but who have been kind of outside of the mainstream. And they're talking not about how to do flips or kicks or tricks. They're talking about when they struggled with depression or how to be a good friend or family issues or LGBTQ issues or the environment and other things. So it's really, really touching film about, again, human issues that affect all of us, but seen and told from the perspective of these legendary skaters.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So
I have a little question.
Yep.
My question. So you are working with the dialogue, and are you working with stems as well? Like something that you would be delivered the stems from the music?
I am the entire audio department. So they gave me their stereo mix and they said, we need a 5.1 mix for festivals. And I took what they had and I said, okay. And I went back and I did all of the dialogue editing on every single 100 interviews. I refreshed all of the effects. I split everything out into Atmos beds and surround beds. And the same with the music, took the stereo score, turned it into a surround and immersive score, basically did everything, and then did the re-recording mixing afterwards.
That's pretty interesting to share in regards to like how you did that, because you pretty much the re-recording mixer here. You're pretty much the re-recording mixer here, right?
Yes.
So that's pretty cool.
And so I have probably 30 timelines or sessions from before this. This was the re-recording session, but I have then sessions for just the dialogue, for just the music, for just the effects, and then sessions just for dialogue editing and just for splitting out some of the effects and replacing some of the sounds. And it was a big job, but it was a lot of fun.
So this is a perfect example of what Thor would do with stems. So if you heard the waves, you heard the water, what he would do if he had like brass and heavy percussion that might clash with that, he would have to either take away from my stem, all right, and add here or there to make it work so that everything could work together. And if it doesn't work, guess what Thor is going to do? He's going to remove something from my stem.
Exactly.
We don't like that.
So what I have here is a mastering session. I started off using Analog Outboard, and we used to download all the plugins that everyone said was so amazing 20 years ago. I've been doing this for over 20 years. And we tried them out, and they're like, no, I think I'm going to stick with the analog. And we had a few nice pieces of digital, like some Daniel Weiss gear and some Crane Song gear. But over time, I have to say the plugins are getting really good. Really good. and less heat and less expense and recallability and all that other stuff. So I've been challenging myself to work more and more in the box as I'm able to. I still have a nice rec of some of the choice outboard if needed and when needed, but it's nice to be able to try to do things in the box. So I'm going to walk you through this session very quickly. This is all of the processing that's going on. I have 3 tracks. I have the original reference mixes. I have then what I call the source. So the reason I do this is because I came up using Sonic. James, nice to see you. And until a few years ago, I was using Sonic, and then Sonic, of course, doesn't really work anymore. So I went out looking for a replacement, and I've tried Nuendo, I tried Reaper, I tried a number of other things, and I wasn't really happy, and ended up using Resolve, Fairlight. So that's the short version. So we have a source track, which is feeding here. If you follow my mouse, these are some processors, mostly EQ, and then a dynamic range controller from George Massenburg. They're going to my 2-bus. My 2-bus is here, and that has the Vice. I typically keep my my final limiter on a separate bus, so I can, if someone needs just an extra half a dB or they need it brought down half a dB, I can go back and do it simply by changing that without having to go into the main chain. And also because sometimes on the main chain, this is going to outboard via some analog ins and outs and then coming back into the system. So it just keeps it clear. And since I have the hardware controllers, which did not come up, that's interesting. Oh, this will be, oh, right, I know why. Yeah. I can, with a touch of a button, switch between different tracks and different setups and everything, which is really good for A/B comparison and stuff like that. So we have, so Quartet literally is on every mastering session I do because it is a Swiss Army knife. It will do everything. If I need a straight EQ, I've got the EQ, right? And once again, we've heard it before, but let's just review the GUI once more. The top row is the parametric EQ, where we have low shelf, peak, high shelf, or we can turn it off. So this is, and Duane will correct me if I'm wrong, but this is both determining the filter circuit for the level control, that's the level measurement that's going on, but it's also determining what kind of adjustment we're making to the track. And then if we want to use the compressor part, I use the rotation point quite often because I really like it. I like the way it works, and I have a very gentle ratio because I want it to be invisible. I don't want people to hear that something's going on. I don't want them to hear pumping or anything. This is mastering after all. The mixes have been approved. They don't want a huge difference. They just want everything better than what it was. So here I have, looks like I have 2 bands active, and I had an extra 2 bands I was playing around with, but I preferred using the Sontec and the SPL because one of the things that is amazing with Quartet is it's completely transparent. It's a wire with gain, and it's super quick. You can go in and out so fast that your head will spin, and there's no artifacts. There's no overshoot. There's no distortion. There's no nothing. But for my ears, and I've been around for a while doing this, sometimes I like that a little bit of texture, a little bit of distortion, dare we say it. And some of the other plugins do that a little bit better. So that's why I have a few others in this chain. So we can listen to the original mix that was sent to me, just to get an impression. Everyone can hear that? Grasping for air. Let's close some of that so you can see, because we wouldn't be audio engineers if we didn't watch what we were doing. We have to use our ears for everything. Shadows weave, doubts hanging heaviness, memories fade out, thicket of numbness close. So I don't know if you hear it, but I hear a lot of bass, really a lot of bass. I'm going to disable most of the processing, and we'll do an A/B. This is with Quartet. Let's bring that up. Look what it's doing. It's stepping on the bass. We'll enable some of the others as well. Sontech. That's our original mix. Kind of muddy, kind of boomy. And that's with the quartet and a few additional things. And then of course we have the device for a little bit of level because we need to reach the Spotify and or Apple Music and or other streaming services. So here, this is only applying the reduction in the bass at this frequency when the threshold exceeds a certain level. So we're not stepping on the piano sections of the song. We're only stepping on the portions where it starts getting fortissimo and it starts getting a little bit louder, and there's way too much bass. If we had just turned this up as it was, you would be wondering where your woofers had gone because they'd be in a neighbor's room. Can you hear the differences? Is that apparent here? Yeah. Okay. So, and then we have, of course, devices just for some level, but we can go in and play with this a little bit. In fact, let's do that. So we've got the right. So. I can adjust when it kicks in, how sensitive it is. Right, that's the rotation point. So this is when it actually starts working. And also the amount of the cut that's applied. And again, we're applying EQ. We're not doing compression, we're EQing. But the compressor is what's determining how and when and what to apply the EQ to. And here, of course, no changes happening. Because I want to hear the bass, but I don't want it overwhelming the track to such a huge degree that people wonder if there's something wrong with their car or stereo. And again, I could use this as an EQ. I could just turn the EQ on, peak, boom, and there, we've got a nice little bump. And that'll work, no problem at all. But again, because of my sensibilities and the feeling of the track and how it speaks to me, I guess, from kind of a mastering perspective, I listen kind of with my guts, my heart, and obviously if there's something very obviously technically wrong, I'll go in and address it. And the bass is actually one of the things that I think for this specific track, it's not making it more convincing. It's actually taking away from some of the delicacy. This is called Pines and Lace. So he's talking about snow falling through the pines like lace. So I found that using this here for this specific purpose wasn't helping, but the control. So I often use this for control, really just to kind of help keep things clean and focused on the main bearing elements of the song. So this is one track, and I'll play one more, and then I think we'll open it for questions. And this is a French artist that I've done quite a bit of work with for the last 10 or 12 years. And very straight compressed mix, as you can see. Let's see, there we go. Can have a better look at that. And here as well, same thing, same setup. Original reference is muted, and then we have the source track, which is what we're listening to, which has the processing on it. And then we have our destination track, which is where I bounce the final masters to through the bus processing and everything else. I typically have some meters attached as well. I didn't put them up for this because I didn't want to get distracted. But we have a quartet. And here, as you'll see, there's two bands, one in the bass, 200 hertz, so not exactly low bass, and one at 340. And you'll see here again, I'm using a rotation point. I really like that because it gives you this amazing control over things. And it's basically once the level gets over a certain threshold, it will pull that down just a bit. And what it's doing is creating space. Now I could use an EQ. You can say, oh, if it's muddy, just pull down the EQ at 340, right? 340.8, a tight Q, and we're good. Well, the problem is I want that warmth. I want that foundation, that nice, that's kind of where the cellos are and other things, and also some of the voice in this case. So I want it there most of the time, but when it gets too much and it gets a little bit muddy, a little bit boomy, I want to just pull it down just gently, just delicately, so that it doesn't step on everything else. Does that sound reasonable? People with me? And here also I have another Sontech and a Tube Tech, because the Tube Tech's the plugin, I don't know who did it, but they got the sparkle of the transformers really kind of down. So I've never heard a plugin that actually does that except for the Tube Tech and the SPL Pass EQ, which I also use quite a bit, as you saw on the last session. And these are just I just pulled in some random singles to show you guys. And then we have this, which is an emulation of an SPL compressor. This is adding a little bit of level. It's adding quite a bit of level, actually, because the mix is very low, very quiet. And we have an Oxford limiter at the end, which is adding 3 dB of gain. It's keeping our output under the mastered by iTunes spec, which is -1 dB ceiling. It's the same for Spotify. Got a soft knee, very, very slow attack, and a relatively slow release, and a little bit of what they call enhance, which is it's distortion, but it gives a little bit of sparkle. So we can listen to the original track first. Unmastered, it's going to be loud, and I'm sorry, it's going to be soft. So when we switch, it'll be a little bit louder. That's because of, let's get rid of this just to make it easier. But we'll see what's going on with quartet. Okay, boom, boom. Is that coming through?
Dans un imaginaire plein d'évasion, un rêve impossible, dit la raison.
So this is the source track, as you can see from the meters. And we see that the mute has switched. Once the track starts kicking, we'll mix it up a little bit so you can hear the difference. See how? Have a look at how the quartet is moving. It's just pulling down where things get a little bit tight. And I can bypass this. I don't know if it's equally obvious to you, but for me it gets a little bit muddy and a little bit flat immediately. I don't know if that comes through Zoom or not. So even though I'm applying EQ here, it almost functions as a compressor in the sense that it gives the track a little bit of bounce. Because again, we're pulling away these oversaturated areas and just evening things out a little bit, so it lets the rest come through, the rhythmic elements. That's the original track. That's for the processing and without the limiter. See how it gets kind of tubby there without the quartet? Anyone who speaks French here? I guess not.
Just a few words.
Yeah. So this is, again, it's a really useful tool. I feel that, and I've explained this in other settings when people have asked about this specific tool. I see also I've got something on the high end, just pulling down some of a little bit of sharpness in certain areas. For me, I feel like I do about half of the job in one plugin. And the other thing that's really nice that people don't think about, I have colleagues and friends who have literally thousands of plugins. I don't have time to learn thousands of plugins. I have time to learn 10 or 12 really, really well, which is why I use the Quartet and the Massenburg and a few of the SPLs and one of the Tube Techs and the Sontech and a few others. And that's it, because I can get pretty much everything I need. And then, of course, some nice outboard, but we don't don't have to talk about that. But the nice thing about this is that both corrective or for enhancement, I can do everything in one plugin. And I can also use this in a film re-recording mix where I have an Atmos bus or I have an Atmos bed, and because this is 16 channels internally, so I can use it on LCR, or I can use it on the 7.1 main layer, or I can use it on the height layer, or I can use it just in front or just in the rear, and it'll just adapt. So it's really nice to have one tool that you can use for so many different things. And I'm sure there are others. This came with Sonic. So again, I'm a mastering guy. I used Sonic way back in the day. And at some point they included it with Sonic, probably 10, 12, 15 years ago. James Anderson, I'm sure, knows. And I looked at it a few times and pulled it up to a few sessions. And I looked at the interface and I'm like, yeah, I'm out. I have no idea what's going on here. Because it is daunting. It is. But again, it's an EQ section, 4 bands of EQ. These each feed a compressor and an expander. In order. It's a chain through all the way from the top to the bottom. So I could set up just a compressor, just a regular compressor that's full band all the way across, or I can make it do kind of multiband. But I want to do the dynamic EQ because that, again, is so much more transparent and so much more powerful compared to the other tools that I have. And I have like a Vice DS1 and in hardware and other stuff. So this is really kind of, for me, a secret weapon for mastering, for film mixing, for things like that. Again, I get all the heavy lifting and the bread and butter done here, and then I'll move on and, oh, the Sontec emulation sounds amazing. It just came out, I think, a year or two ago. And I've used real Sontecs. This is pretty close. And the TubeTech as well, and the SPL. I have the SPL hardware myself. Sounds great. But it's nice having it in a plugin where you can just do it all in the box. I think I'm going to round off there, but I hope this was useful and interesting and even maybe entertaining. So thank you.
Yeah, so before Duane takes, I don't know if Duane's gonna say something, but Duane has beautiful videos explaining all of these things that you guys can watch like a million times until it works, because that's what I do. So it's a beautiful product.
Me too.
I consistently have to go and remind myself on the side chain and all that stuff, because Duane explains it really nice, and he actually has different videos explaining different parts of what he used it for, like the acoustic guitar, the vocals, and all that good stuff. So if you guys are interested, he does have videos on Instagram and also on his website.
And if you have the time, so I started it took me a while to figure out the interface, and I was using it here and there a little bit. But when I moved to America in 2018, Duane invited me to a thing at Paramount with Alan Meyerson and Nathaniel Kunkel. And we sat for 2 hours and they walked us through some of their mixes and how they use it. And that's when everything clicked. I'm like, oh, that's what it's doing. So I would say it's worth the effort, because now that I get it, I'm like, how could I live without this before? Yeah. And it's a tool every audio engineer should know, because it will do things nothing else will.
I would dare say, once again, this is a industry standard for many of us people that are in that circle, whether it's independent or blockbuster, whatever. It's an industry standard that many people don't know about, and you can only find this gem by watching certain people. And once you run into something like this, because I heard of Wholegrain audio before, and I was intrigued by it, but I never got it. It wasn't until months later, which is why the song that you guys heard from my side, The Once of Love, didn't have quartet in it in the original master. But when I got the product and I applied it by watching Alan's video and the way he has it in his template, I learned what he did from what I watched, and I applied it to my work. And I tell you guys, night and day, it has improved my template, and it has taken a lot of load off my back in regards to preparing stems to deliver. So I would honestly say that this is industry standard for me, and I can probably speak for Thor as well, and for many other people. So try it out. It's worth it.
And yeah, to not to beat a dead horse, but to repeat a point that happened earlier, a lot of people will ask, yeah, but I have a multiband compressor. It's the same thing. It's not the same thing. A multiband compressor is going to compress, the timbre will change. And I use multiband compression. Again, I have a Weiss DS1, which I love, but it does different things. It does compression on a restricted frequency range. This does EQ using a compressor as the trigger and as the controller for the EQ, which is very, very different. And in my opinion, in my experience now, using it for many, many years now, far more useful in many cases. Yeah, sorry.
Are there any questions?
How processing intensive is it?
Heavily.
We do have a Pro Tools plugin that will run on the HDX TI DSP. We have two varieties of the dynamic parametric EQ. One is called Trio, which is a 3-band. It's strictly single channel, so it's mostly configured to do input processing. And as such, when it runs on the TI DSP, it will share that DSP with other plugins. I do know that if you run Trio at 192K on a Pro Tools DSP, it will take up, I think, 91% of that processor. But you will have 9% left over. Now the 4-band works not only single channel, it also supports multi-channel stems, and that runs on the DSP as well, but not every possible configuration of channel setup and sample rate. At 48K, the Quartet 4-band processor will process up to 10 channels as a monolithic multi-channel processor. Once you get to 96, that channel capacity is cut down to 5, and Quartet will not run a period at 192K. So it is a time domain processor, and as such, it does a lot of computation on a sample by sample basis. But there are processors out there that take up much more processor resources. And I know that's a vague answer, and the only thing that I have really solid numbers for is the DSP channel capacities per sample rate. But if I may start sharing my screen now, I can show you. Okay. So we've got that. Now I need to move this zoom thing out of the way so I can bring up that window. Hold on. Does anybody know how to, if you're screen sharing, get this zoom thing out of the way so I can go to the menu for Pro Tools?
If
There
you're
we go.
talking about, okay,
Okay.
I can't see it, so I can't.
Yeah, we can't see what you're seeing.
System usage. Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quartets running on here. And the CPU total and there is an extra quartet processing the microphone that I'm speaking to you through. Okay, so there are spikes where the system load approaches something in the range of 20%, but the nominal processing load was somewhere around 10. And that's with 5 regular quartets, one, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1 on the mic here.
No, that's not bad at all.
And I can say for the native processing, I'm running everything. So I had a dedicated machine that I actually just sold an Intel, and I'm running everything off of an M3 Max laptop. And I can run 192, 96K and just load up with as many as I want, and it never breaks a sweat. It just keeps running.
Nice.
It's crazy.
Any other questions? If not, I'm going to go through my very quick demo on search and destroy.
Can I ask something?
Sure.
Yes, please.
Is there processing delay, and is it variable depending upon the amount of action the processor has taken?
No, the latency on Trio, the 3-band single channel product at 48K is 2 milliseconds. So it's just 96 samples. When we get to Quartet, which is the 4-band multi-channel processor, the very last stage of Quartet is the analog peak limiter. That adds another 64 samples to the latency. So it turns the overall latency over to, I think, 3 1/3 milliseconds.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so
Duane, can I ask you to lean into the mic a little bit, please?
sure.
Thank you.
But what might be happening is that distortion comes in when I get a little bit too close and I hit the red line on the the input. So that's what I'm trying to avoid here. Okay. All right. So you remember in Anthony's session is especially with that strings stem that one thing that dynamic parametric EQ is used for quite often is for attenuating parts of the spectrum. So we taper off the attack on the violins, but at the same time, we wanted to taper the decay of the basses and the cellos, the very low end. As a 1.4 of this software series, I made a relatively efficient method for finding and dealing with such things. And I'm first going to play you the example signal, which is a single track of an acoustic guitar, and let's play an excerpt from it. Okay, so that sounds overall pretty darn good, but there is something that happens when that guitar is strummed. The click, the pick contact with the strings has a component to it. It sounds a lot more like a breath mint being dropped onto a kitchen counter. So it sounds a lot more like a click than it does an actual pick. And I want to try to find that click sound and just basically deal with it. So our very first part of this 4-step process is that we take the band into sidechain search. And I also want to point out that since that strum is of very short duration, we want processing that will get in there, process that sound, and then leave. Because much of this recording is not of the strum sound, it is the sustained acoustic guitar tone. So by necessity, we have to set the attack time and the release time for this band to something extremely fast. So I have alt-clicked this to put it into what's called sidechain search. We will be monitoring the band filtered input coming in from the sidechain. It does two things. We will monitor the band filtered input of the sidechain, and at the same time, we will keep track of the maximum level of this band that it encounters. So now we want to go find that band. And I know it's going to be relatively narrow, but I want to start with something that's even more narrow so that we'll detect the very crown of that band. That should be a lot more distinctive. So we start with that. Now the center frequency. We're darn close to it. Starts at about 6,500, goes to 8,500 or so. So something in the middle will probably do. This is probably a pretty reasonable setting. So now that we've found our center frequency, we lower the Q until the sound that we want to take care of no longer gets louder, and then everything else outside of it starts to get louder. So
we're not hearing that.
Okay, I'll tell you what. I'll put some input gain here.
It's a very high frequency thing, Mac.
Yeah, it might be best if you have original sound for musicians turned on.
I hear it fine on my end.
System.
Yeah, I hear it fine.
So I'm going to bring down that Q until that click sound no longer gets louder. So it's around here, and I'm thinking 5.4. So I'm going to stop and we'll recurse back to the beginning now. So I found the center frequency and a good value of Q. Now I want to set up the compression. I'm going to put it in rotation point. And I'm going to set the rotation point to actually I put 6 dB of gain in here, so I need to compensate for that in the minus 15. That might actually be a bug that I might want to fix in the future. So when I take things out, it will reset this gain back to 0. All right? But the effective gain was minus 21. And let's now offset that so that we'll take care of that click. Not enough here, almost there, probably a bit too much here. Let's settle for here. So now you can really tell the difference there. But now we want to give it some positive compression ratio so that it's only processing when that pick is present. Let's go back to the beginning once again. So what we did with the rotation point is that we measured that level, that's sort of the worst case level that will actually come through in this band. And we set the rotation point to that input level. And then we offset that to take care of that overall click sound. So we know that when we hit this worst case level, we will be applying this much attenuation to that band. And then we just adjust the compression ratio such that when that click isn't present, its level will be down here, whereas no actual boosting or cutting will actually be done. So I'm going to start that once again. I want to play with attack times and release times. Let's set the attack to something we would more normally use. Something between 10 and 15 milliseconds. Now, when we switch in and out, there's pretty much no change. The reason for that, excuse me, is that the attack time is now just too slow, so that when you hit that strum, it doesn't react to that strum until after the strum has completed. So we're pretty much forced to do our attack time at maximally fast. So now let's set the release time to something we would more normally use. 120. Now when I take that out, it's definitely taking care of that click, but it's now cutting into the guitar tone. It's now notch filtering that. So once that strum is done, it is hanging around for just too long. So also by necessity, we have to have the release time at or near its maximum speed. Excuse me. So does anybody have any questions on this? If not, I would like to know if Anthony would like to cover some more stuff in his session.
Yeah, I have the Pro Tools closed at the current moment.
Well,
but I do want to say that, you know, Quartet, what Duane just showed right now is also good for, like he was doing, fixing some issues. So you can tell that this is a very a really cool product like Quartet or the Trio to search and destroy, add color, sculpting, mastering, and it does everything. So I think there's more to show because you also have the bottom parameters that you can also, you know, in mastering, I guess. Certain tracks.
I'll tell you what. Why don't we load your session back on?
Let's keep in mind that it's midnight for some people too.
Yes.
Oh yeah, it's 12 a.m. here.
Yep. Let's take a look at the choir, because that really wasn't very prominent in this mix. Let's say that we want to bring the overall level of the choir up. Well, let's solo it and let's play it. Okay, I'm going to set the beginning to like major 10 or so, but let's bring up a quartet. It is not processing anything. Everything is set to neutral. Excuse me. And let's just say we want the green band. There is one part of that choir sound that doesn't really fit. The normal sound I would associate with a choir. And let's do that search and destroy part. This is going to be a bit more broadband than that pick part, but we still want to start at a relatively high Q. We're getting quite a bit of it around here. Some around 7K. Let's go back to the I'm thinking somewhere around here. And for this sound, since it is relatively broadband and noisy, I'm just going to try giving it just a constant cut. Let's see what that turns. So you can really tell a significant difference here. Beginning. And the level of the voices when I bring this in, it really doesn't cut. So it is just cutting to that noisy portion and letting virtually all of the choir sound that we wanted in the first place. Allow that to pass. So there is still some of it left, but now when we go back to the overall mix, so I'm going to now play this with, let's start with the gain on the choir neutral, and then we'll start pushing it up. So we don't hear very much of it here. So let's go to
Duane. This is Gary. Your clicking noise is back with a vengeance during both your talking and your music.
Okay. All right. So, any questions on what I'm trying to do here? If Anthony wants to take it up from this point, he's welcome to, but probably held you on for way more than enough time. I really thank you for your patience, and want to thank Gary, Jess, and Dan as well for giving us this chance to present, and I want to know whether there are any more questions.
Duane, can I add a comment?
Sure.
So, super secret mastering technique only for you guys who stayed to the end. Because each band is individual, independent, we could do what Duane's doing, but we'll use we use the compressor functionality. So you could do a DS, right? So we could be cutting S's, but say that the entire top end is kind of dull and it needs some sparkle and some lift. But if you lift it, the S's get worse with an EQ. Well, here you can actually use the de-esser and the high frequency lift in two independent bands, and they don't interfere with each other. And that's really, really cool. And that's something you can't really do with anything else. So for those of you who stuck until the end, that's the free mastering tip for you guys.
Yep, because you could just like splitting the bands, correct?
Yep. Yep. And they can even overlap. There's no problem at all to overlap them.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so these are things that you can find while you're playing with the quartet, experimenting, and just you could do whatever. So that's why I'm saying the videos in his website are very helpful, and highly recommend checking it out if you guys are serious about jumping into this quartet boat and trying it out on your own stuff. And obviously it's used for music, for effects, everything that has to do with audio, and it's been a good tool for me, and obviously for Thor and a bunch of other people.
All right, any other questions for our guests? Comments?
Looks like an amazing product.
Yeah, really.
Oh, not to mention, they are. I don't know if you still have it open, you can change the colors of the fonts, the background. It was pretty cool when I found out that you can do that, because I have dark mode on my Pro Tools, so the coloring of the plugin, the interface changes. So you have on the top side you have like a fader where you can change the brightness. Duane can explain that better. And then at the bottom, where the tool chest is, there's also another fader where you can adjust the colors of the fonts. And so if you do work in dark mode, I work in dark mode, so the plugin showcases a kind of a different color scheme on its interface. So
how is my voice now? Is it
sounds great?
Sounds good.
Okay, I put into the chat window I do product seminars roughly every 10 days. So I try to do it 2 or 3 times a month, and the next seminar will be this Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, which would be 1 p.m. Eastern, and that would make it 1700 UTC. And I put into the chat window all of that detail. And the URL to click to reach the Zoom. Any more questions from?
Question for
Sir.
Duane. And if this is, I don't know. When you adjust the parameters on the EQ, you're entering a number in the box. Is there a way you could do it by dragging the image on say on the spectrum display or the in-out graph?
Yes. And see, I can probably demonstrate that to you without overloading my USB brick and then causing that distortion once again. Okay, so let's just say that set things up in this manner. You can drag these. I call these things beads, and there's a different shaped bead for the type of band that we're working with. This is a peak dip. This is the band
You're not
time.
sharing.
Oh, crap. Thank you. Keep forgetting. It's always on. Okay. All right, so you can click on these beads and drag them around. The shape of the beads um, correspond to the band type. So this bead with the peak is the peak dip. If there's no peak whatsoever, this means that this band type is turned off. Low shelf, and you will change all of the appropriate parameters as well. But also when you're dragging, you can manipulate the scroll wheel and change the auxiliary, which in the shelf case is the shelf slope, or in the peak dip case would be Q. And you can also do the same thing with this, that will change the ratio of either the compression or the expansion.
Can I add something, Duane?
Sure.
For those of you who prefer using hardware controllers, like me, I much prefer to have faders and buttons and knobs. It also maps to those. I don't have a Pro Tools one or Euphonics, but I'm pretty sure it works there. I use the Fairlight, and everything's mapped to the Fairlight controllers, so I don't have to mouse around on the screen. I can actually grab a knob and manipulate it directly, which is way easier to work, in my opinion.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any more questions? Let's see. Anthony mentioned he has lots of starting points that he likes to work with. Well, both trio and quartet have something called the band tool chest, where you can store many of these initial settings. Mine has been modified from its default setting, but it is a matter of taking these items and dragging and dropping them. This is supposed to be a key head. A skeleton key head. So it shows you just what a wonderful artist I am. You take this item, you drop it into a key hole, which is here, and it changes it into a low shelf that doesn't have any dynamics set for it. So, and I could change it to a high shelf. And once again, dynamics aren't set. And I can just set it to generic dynamics. And what happens here? It sets that band type to off. Now, off has a special meaning in quartet. It just means that this band is no longer frequency selective. So this just turns into a broadband dynamics processor. And both of the thresholds are actually set on this setting, so I can and give it a little bit of expansion down here so that for very low levels, it will cut. Probably the main reason why I wanted to show this to you is that it does come with a default set. Some of the more interesting settings that I provide you are things that I had to do lots of research on. This will do analog noise reduction system demodulation. And I just generically call this type A. This setting is based on published white papers. So we'll turn it into a decoder for type A. But this one took from the ideal point and made something that, after a lot of painful A-being, I determined sounded slightly better. So there are just slight changes here. Now you might ask, well, we have this setting. How do we calibrate this to tones? Well, there are actually two ways you can do this. We have this stepper that that will move all of your thresholds down by 1 dB, and you can hold it. Nope, you can't hold it down. It's probably just to save us from ourselves. But the other way you can do it is through this I-O stepper. This will increase the input gain, which feeds all these bands, and it will decrease the output gain, which is fed by the last Dynamic EQ band in the opposite direction. So if I set this upwards in I/O, it goes downwards here. And I can set it in the opposite direction there. So you can either adjust the input gain such that you will calibrate properly to tones, or you can move the thresholds and leave the input gain unmodified. So any questions on that? And once again, now I'm really holding you back. I'm keeping many of you from a good night's sleep, and I apologize.
No, this is what we live for.
Yeah, so type A maps to Dolby, type 1 maps to DBX, and type T maps to Deutsche Telekom. And if you don't have any RIA filters handy, this is a curve de, decoder. It will work at at particular sampling frequencies, and it's been calibrated to have an error no greater than 0.1 dB from 20 hertz to 20K. So you can drop this into here, and then you can see that this is actually a this can be done in 3 bands, whereas if we get the sample rate higher, we'll probably have to dedicate more bands to it. Yes. Well, actually, we got that in 3 as well. But note that there is no dynamic processing here. That we piecewise put together a RIA filter. And we also do Redbook. And once again, that is sample rate dependent, and it's modeled to be accurate to within 0.1 dB from 20 to 20K. Any questions on that? So all in all, you can do a lot of stuff with dynamic parametric EQ. Some of it would be really tough to do with a graphic EQ based system.
What does anti-Lisp sound like?
Well, okay, let's try that out on my voice. So I'll open the tool chest here. And let's see if we can get something good out of this. So this is a single band, and that's tuned to very high frequency, tuned to about 8K and fairly narrow. So yeah, that's a very tight tonal Lisp type sound. So actually, let's we can just leave it as is and say that for Lisps and it will take care of that. And if we want it to be a little bit more tonal, which Lisps can tend to be, we can make the Q higher. But that also means that our level measurements will be lower, so we probably want to lower the level of the rotation point. Check 2, 3. Is this thing on? So what were your impressions of the anti-Lisp starting point?
It's at least promising, but since you don't have a Lisp, it's hard to know for sure.
Right. So I have the impression that that most Lisps are somewhat tonal in nature, and that's why I set the EQ relatively high.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
And as such, it will measure very, very low levels. So we have to move everything down quite a bit. But this this 50 50.9 to 1 ratio is the highest ratio setting that we currently have. So that just makes it a hard level limiter um, um, in the RMS / compression sense.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else?
Anybody?
I think they're all asleep. And I put them to sleep. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
I think they're trying to absorb all of this. This was a lot.
Well,
and thank you. This we love a lot.
You're welcome to it. Yeah,
So, Duane?
So, sir.
Do you have a list of those analog noise reduction modules that you do? So I don't have to buy the plug-in first to see what's available.
There is only 3. Tell you what, I will. Oops.
As I recall, you had Dolby A.
Yes.
Where you don't mention Dolby, but it says Type A.
Well,
and
yes.
DBX and Telcom. Okay.
I will take a picture of this window and try to do a copy and go to the chat window.
Oh, we'll get the video and I can get it off that. So no need.
Oh, it's in the chat now.
Okay.
The image in the chat.
Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
Hey, Duane?
Sir.
They're asking for a trial discount. Stefan.
Okay. Well, let's see. I will cover matters like that on the Zoom seminar on Friday morning. Let's see. That I don't have the. Well, actually, I do have the seminar stuff. I can do a copy of that and put it into the chat. There's quite a bit of stuff there, though. Okay. You can click on these things for copies of more slide deck.
And again, if you want
PDFs.
to save the chat, you need to go to the 3 dots that are usually on the right side of your screen in the chat window, and it's either at the top or bottom, depending on which era of Zoom you have. And click on that, and that'll save to your documents folder or wherever Zoom things go.
Right. I think it is either to the documents or documents, and then there is a there is a Zoom folder within the documents folder, but it might also put it into the downloads.
Yeah.
And note that it won't save your chat until you leave this meeting.
Right. And it only saves it to there. So Stephen, are you seeing the chat? Can you? So you're on your phone.
Okay.
That's why we encourage people to be on a computer to come to these. But
we'll tell you what. Once this is over, we'll either get to send you stuff. Dolby B and C. Sadly, no. Those use sliding shelves and um, the actual basis of this processor. I published a paper in the JAES in the January issue of the year 2009. So that's quite a long time ago now. I suddenly remember, but that is the basis of the processor, and you will see if you go through that paper. Everything is set up to in digital signal processing. They talk a lot about linear time invariant systems, especially as they apply to IIR filters. The reason for that is once an IIR becomes linear time variant, you invite a lot of internal filter noise into the um, into your processing if you're doing an IIR. But my paper describes a system such that the actual internal filter, IIR filter, does not change over time. The only thing that changes over time are outputs from the unit delays within this IIR filter, neither feeding them forward or feeding them back. And if you go either way, curiously, you get something that will not have zipper noise. So that's how you can accomplish that. But that basically means that we've put all of our filter quietness processing into boost and cut. So if we have to change either center frequency, cutoff frequency, or Q of this filter, we can't do it quietly. So so this system will probably never be able to do Dolby B or Dolby C. Just A and the old versions of Dolby SR have the fixed shelves, but the more modern SR, I think, has sliding shelves. And it's hard to tell which is which. which post are you referring to, Jess? I mean, you want a picture of my.
No, that was for Stephen. Stephen wasn't able to save the chat.
Right.
And just suggested that he take a picture of your post in the chat with his phone. I think that's what you're referring to, right?
What was the original question?
Was there a discount, and how does he reach you? So you put that in the chat and he couldn't save it.
Right. Okay.
So I think we're good there. Anything else, anybody?
Just a practical point. I think in the chat on my computer, it saves as plain text file. So if there's something like Duane's screenshot, you have to download that separately. There's a little, if you hover over it, there's a little down arrow, and you'd have to save that separately if you want to keep it.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Or you could take a screenshot if you were so moved. But all right. How about some applause for our presenters for a magnificent effort? Very good.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. That was cool. And informative and thought-provoking. So one of the cool things about this Zoom thing is that there's no time limit. We don't care. We can talk for a while here. I got time and love having so many people from all over the place. We literally are spanning the world here. I'm looking at London and I'm looking at Tokyo, and we had Colombia and other places too. And I think there's people who I can't see on this call. But if you want to share an audio thing that you've been up to lately or something like that, I love hearing it. Anybody been doing a cool audio thing? I'll say that I got a mixer recently that I got in part because it alleged that it had dynamic EQ capability in it. And that is the Behringer Wing, and I went through it today before here, and I'll be darned if I can find anything in there that is a dynamic EQ. And even if it was, I'm sure it would be limited a lot compared to this. Tyrell, do you have a comment there? You're waving your hand or something.
No, I was just scratching my face. Sorry about that. But
you got to be careful.
I know.
This is like an auction. You scratch your face and you bought the thing.
That's pretty cool, though, about the Behringer board that you got.
Are you familiar with it?
I'm familiar with quite a bit of Behringer products, yeah, but not that specific board.
Well, I'm familiar with a lot of Behringer products too, and this one has nothing to do with anything else. It is its own universe, and it's taken me a long time to figure it out. It took me a long time to figure the other one out too, the basic M and X series, but this one is a stumper. It's got 40 stereo inputs capability and 16 stereo outputs, but 24 physical inputs on it and 8 physical outputs. So in order to populate the thing, you got to have the stage boxes that are the same ones that work with the M and X series, but you know, it's a 4-space device, the rack version anyway, and of the mixer, and you need another 12 or more spaces of inputs in order to fill the thing up. And it's been a learning curve adventure. And like I say, I looked for today specifically for dynamic EQ, and I could not find anything that is similar to this. So,
Tor.
Just wanted to point out, somebody put a link in the chat earlier, pretty early on when we began. I don't see it now, but I clicked on the link and it's an overview of the 10 best dynamic EQ plugins. And I was just looking through that. None of them are what Duane and we've been demonstrating. Most of these are EQs with some dynamics added. Some are multiband compressors, some are a little bit of both. But it seems like the name is caught on, so it's being used for a lot of different things. So
yeah,
good to know.
I believe that, and that's what I saw in the devices in the mixer that I have. It does some dynamic stuff, but it's not doing what you're doing.
Right. Yeah.
Industry standard, guys. Industry standard.
Really
Right.
confusing.
Right.
Nailed it.
I actually do have a question now that I think about it for Anthony. I saw when you were going over your signal chain that you were also using Pro Q3. Like, how would you differentiate between what you're doing with Quartet and like what something like Pro Q3 is? Does that kind of tie into what Thor was just talking about, how they kind of jump on to calling themselves dynamic EQ, even though they kind of seem to do different things?
Yeah, what I was doing with the Quartet was basically some tonal stuff with the Fab Q3. I don't remember what I was doing, but maybe high pass filtering on some. I think it was in the multi channels, in the multi tracks. You were seeing them.
Yeah, I believe so. It was above your Quartet in the chain, I believe.
Yeah, I don't really know what I did there.
That's okay.
But
I just noticed that, and because I'm somewhat familiar with that one as opposed to Quartet.
Yeah, so I use the Fab filter a lot, especially for a lot of the low frequency stuff. I just begin with some high pass, take care of some simple stuff. The Quartet, I have them in the aux groups in the bottom just to take care of the heavy load from the top. So I'll have, like, for example, I used the Go Clip, the Go Clip. They have a Go Clip track, so you can add some saturation to a single track and add some oomph to it. And so I have that in my aux group. I have some other stuff there. I don't quite have my stuff open right now. But yeah, but so basically with the Fab Q3, I just do some basic EQ stuff, nothing that the Quartet can do. As you can see, what I did with the Quartet, you can't do that with the Q3 at all. So it's a basic EQ stuff that you would, like high pass, like, basically, whatever I see that, can be tamed a bit, I'll probably use like a dynamic mode on it. But not to the point where I'm using it and you'll see like a whole bunch of things happening. It's just like minor stuff that I would probably just lower here, lower over here, because I deal with a lot of heavy instruments. Like I'll have like a big percussion stuff, and so I'll probably add a dynamic thing just on a certain section of the EQ. But yeah, if you saw it on top, it's probably doing like very light work. So I could just tell you that much. So I do use different plugins, but I could tell I don't do heavy processing on these plugins. So the strings would probably have the high pass. I use a lot of bottom end, and so just basic stuff. If I had it open, I would show you, but I don't have it open. But what you saw with the Quartet, that's basically where everything ends up going. I know Thor. I noticed that Thor had it on the first insert on his stuff. I have it on the last. as a, just holding everything, taming whatever I did prior to quartet. It goes through there right into the tool bus. I also have the core the Q3 on my master bus, on the tool bus. So
Is that kind of like the same kind of concept? Is it's just more of a general kind of thing that you're doing with the Q3 and the master?
yeah, just basic stuff, nothing aggressive. I won't do
Yeah.
nothing aggressive on that. I also use the multiband, the Fab filter multiband, but that's just on the that's stuff on the multi tracks, because I have a lot of multi tracks.
Mm-hmm.
So I just do minor stuff there, and then everything goes into the group aux, and that's where the heavy stuff happens, because all percussion will go there. Like if I have a lot of low percussion, high percussion will go into the high percussion group, and that would be processed differently. And so the whole goal with all of that is just adds a little bit of processing, very tiny little bit of processing.
Yeah.
And everything just I'll build up like a color that will work for that music, for the soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so very very light work. So yeah, if I could tell you the difference between the Fab 3 and the Quartet, in my opinion, so what we have, it's a graphic EQ like Duane was mentioning. So and in the Quartet we have what we were just talking about today, the classic parametric and dynamics.
Yeah.
And so with the Q3 we have optional stuff, dynamic mode. With the Quartet, we have integrated compression, expansion per band. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
the Quartet could do a lot more. And the Q3 has something that like a modern surgical feel thing that you can do, but with the Quartet, more like an analog style.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Torque can come in and intervene, or Duane. But this is what from my side, like the Q3 would be like a precision EQ, mastering, visual shaping. With Quartet we have tonal sculpting, which we mentioned a lot in this meeting. The tonal sculpting of stems, expressive control, the things that you saw in that plugin, in the Quartet. The Q3 doesn't stand a chance.
The rotation point seems like a big difference too. Like I don't think I've ever heard of something like that in other EQ plugins that I've encountered.
Yeah, so I don't dismiss Q3 because it's part of my template. It's something that I'll graph quickly. I have a high respect for Quartet, so that's why I have it at the end of my aux groups, because it holds everything. It holds everything down for me, and it controls with the expansion, with the compression. I have quiet moments in music, and I have loud moments in music, and so with like the Q3, you would have to kind of, if you want to automate, you could automate high pass, and and then you could bring it back up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And with the Quartet, you just set the threshold. You set up you activate the expansion with compression, or separately, compression alone or expansion by itself, and then you have Quartet conducting your song for you. So whenever the stuff gets heavy, lower that up. Lower it down, and the quiet parts, bring it up, and then all that good stuff. So so the Quartet can do what the Q3 does, but again, I'm not gonna lie, the Q3 is part of our lives as well. It's a standard that we all use, and that when we send out sessions, everybody has a Q3 at the moment. So it's something that, if I had to send something out and they want me to leave the process, they want me to leave it, they want me to have the plugins in the inserts without printing or anything. They just want the file. I will send them that with the with whatever they have. And currently everybody has a Q3, and not everybody has a quartet. So, but I think if Thor is still here, he has a better explanation than I do, or Duane has a better explanation because he's the maker. But yeah, so what you see, yeah, I do have it there for very light use and heavy use on the quartet.
Gotcha. Thank you.
No problem.
Tor had to go to a meeting
Okay.
after this.
All right.
Duane, do you want to chime in on that?
I am not overly familiar with how FabFilter does their processing. Although anecdotally, I've been told that they do the processing by what's called fast convolution. So they may not be using IIR filters per se. They're just using very long FIR filters, but implementing them with the fast Fourier transform. And that's all I know about FabFilter, which is next to nothing.
Yeah. FabFilter, everybody has FabFilter, so it's a
Right.
it's a I would say that
Right.
composers have that in their templates, but it's an easy graphic EQ to use, and but light use, it's I'm not one of those people that go crazy with EQs, you know what I'm saying? You shouldn't, it's not safe to do that because I've seen people do EQs where they're kind of like getting rid of stuff, and then they'll open up another EQ to add it back up, and it's
Right.
like, what are you doing?
Chasing your tail.
Yeah, it's like, what are you doing? So, and so, I always stop myself when I do EQ stuff, and I tell myself keep it simple, just respect what sound you have, and just you high pass just to get the mix to work, and then the quartet at the end just to tame it, not overly processing. You want to avoid overly processing stuff because you could just jack up your beautiful musical ideas. It's easy. We can mess up musical ideas so quick with EQing and all that good stuff. So yeah, so light use on plugins, and when you add everything up together, you have a nice rose. You know what I mean? So yeah.
All right. Anything else from anybody?
Thank you very much, Anthony. You have gone above and beyond, since it's the middle of the night now.
Yes. You guys are getting the half asleep explanation right now. So if I start talking about a cat, just
Yeah, we're getting to the unvarnished truth here.
Yes.
Well, thank you, everyone. This has been a really good night. Anthony and Duane, thank you so much.
Yeah, so
welcome.
I'm on Instagram. If you guys have Instagram, you can follow me at Anthony Rodriguez Music, and you guys can hear all the noise that I'm making. And if you're a fan of soundtracks, if you're a fan of emotional music or modern music in general, feel free to follow me on there. And I'm always posting behind the scenes of the stuff that I have here at the studio. And I am pretty sure that Duane and I will be doing a lot more things. And always feel free to DM me if you guys are, if you have any questions. It's all studio stuff and studio gear and all music related stuff. So
did you put your contact info in the chat or something, maybe?
Oh yeah, I can
Instagram link or something. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Jess. And thank you, Dan.
You're welcome. Thank you. This was a good day.
Let's see Anthony's post, and then I will save chat.
Yep. Yeah, anything, if you've already saved it, you only saved up until that point that you saved it. You got to save it now again.
Right. Well, how it used to work was that you could save chat and it will wait until you leave the meeting and then save the entire chat at that.
Oh, really? My experience was that it would only save up until I clicked it, and anything after that I didn't get. But yours may be different.
I was not aware.
And that's for meetings that I'm not the host of. The host, I automatically get the chat, so the full thing. So there you go.
I've saved that off, and I know goodbyes can be awkward, but this is probably the time. I think we can all agree this is time that we mutually parted.
Yes.
And thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks very much.
All right.
Have a
Take
wonderful
care.
evening.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye now.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.